was in LaBelle, Florida, which, you know, I had to go. Right? And in some cases, the nice thing about using the books, and these are all books that are really significant to me and significant to the project, is that I get to build in my artist statement right in the drawings. So a lot of the text really is important. It's kind of speaking for me. Well, this is the tie. This is really speaking for me so much. The need to go astray.
So at the point when you stop doing anything else,
yeah.
did only this, is there a kind of a shift of this project stopping to document what your life is doing anyway, and rather your life is now the project is the center and the life aspects of the project is.
Well, no, actually, to be honest, it's the reverse. In a way, my decision to continue just with this one project was kind of a compromise. At that point in 2007, I was ready to just give up being an artist and get out of New York, and I wanted to change my life in some way. Get rid of everything I own, just pack it all in and just start new. But the project, since it happens a little bit every day, was very easy to continue. And it's small. I can do it anywhere. I can put a whole show in a FedEx envelope. I don't need a storage space. So I like that about the project. So in a way, I made a decision that you know, life comes first. And it still does. The project kind of maybe gives me a little bit more impetus. I mean, one interesting byproduct of the project overall, now that I've decided to only do this, is I feel this sudden somehow mandate to live longer. You know, like I wasn't ever really interested in this idea of a long life, but now the project just kind of gets better. It gets more interesting for me every day, every month. So, you know, I sort of needed to continue. I figure 50,000 buildings was a good goal. I'm at 14. I'm at 14 right now, and generally averages 1,000 a year. This is the show here at number 1. And like Stephen said, so Corpus, all the Corpus drawings, you can see in the flesh. They're in the middle, in the structure in the middle. And then around the perimeter, I've done a new group of 100 drawings of buildings in Bangkok, starting with buildings from my first visit. The first time I came to Bangkok was 2008, and then came back in 2010. Now I've been back a number of times. So it's a selection in chronological order. You know, Iron Fairs.
My favorite boss.
These are some of the Corpus ones. And you know, people think that the project reveals something about me, that it's a diary in a way, which it's true, but nobody knows. All these buildings have a story, and nobody knows what actually goes on inside any of these buildings. So it's kind of this false revelation. I say that because this is a hotel in Tangier that I went to and stayed at specifically because it's a place where William Burroughs lived in the 50s, in the early 50s, where he wrote a good chunk of Naked Lunch in the basement this crappy hotel. The manager, the son, who's like the original owner, is the manager there now, and he took me to the room where Burroughs stayed. And, I mean, it's great, you know. But that information is not necessarily anywhere on the drawing. This is actually in New York. This is timepiece. And then little places like this. This is in LA. This building doesn't exist anymore. It was a kind of a remnant of seedier days in Santa Monica in like the 60s and 70s. This is Jean-Luc Nancy. And, you know, again, getting back to the body, getting back to this idea of the sort of phenomenological engagement between ourselves and the world, which for me is always carnal, it's always sexual.
Can you go back a little bit to the Singapore Biennale in the statement where you talked about your fear of entry buildings?
Oh, yeah. Part of the origin of the project was that back in 1997 I had a kind of a sort of slight phobia about entering buildings, where I found myself like getting tense about entering buildings. So a friend of mine who had a fear of going into elevators, who was in therapy for that, told me that his therapist told him as an exercise just to stand in the lobby of an office building and look at the elevators before, you know, and spend some time looking, not necessarily going in. So he was like, you should just look at buildings. You know? And so that was my idea when I wanted to kind of look at the whole totality of the building in isolation, was in part because I needed to sort of size up my opponent in a way. I had this antagonistic relationship to architecture. But through doing the project, actually that changed, and it became this not antagonism, but more of a seduction, of a, you know, kind of a dance. And then I just want to finish because I've been thinking, lately I've been thinking about this idea of, I leave a lot now. I travel a lot and I move around a lot, and so I'm always leaving. And I was thinking about departure as being important. But there's something always kind of sad about leaving. And then I started to realize that, well, leaving is really always arriving too. So why don't I just think about my life and what happens to me, not so much as leaving all the time, but as arriving, as sort of coming. And this very much relates to both Bataille and Jean-Luc Nancy, who speak about jouissance, you know, in this kind of relationship to this world. So there's this idea of, you know, arriving as in we, you know, coming, and then the sexual act of coming, you know, together, which I think sort of bridges what I'm interested in. Just the way we are in the world is always about coming. I don't know if I can say it like that, but there's also this idea of, you know, Freud, for example, says that desire is always a movement towards, right? That when you desire something, you always move towards it. It's a forward motion. And somebody like Heidegger distinguishes between two kinds of freedom. There's practical freedom and transcendental freedom. Practical freedom is the freedom you get when you go away from something, like when you escape your slave situation. That's a freedom that's always kind of leaving. But transcendental freedom is is the freedom you have when you move towards something of your own will. So again, I think there's you can kind of also think about that distinction in terms of departing and arriving or coming and going. And so I'm trying to find a way to think through this process in terms of a more kind of positive notion of transcendental freedom, where it's always a sort of movement towards something, always arriving. You're never leaving. You're always arriving. You're always going someplace. In any case, I'll leave it there, and if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to talk. Thanks. You can clap with me.
คำถามหรือแบบข้อสังเกต
เวลามุมมองของเขาในการที่เขาเลือกเปิดโทรศัพท์เนี่ยมันต้องแตกต่างกับก่อนปืนกับหลังปืนเข้าใจ
Just talking about the project where you were swallowing pieces of your shirts, the before and after of the process of doing that in relations to choosing buildings as subjects of capture, like how do these two?
Oh, good question, because yes, I think about in a way the two projects are very similar. Part of what Buildings Entered is a kind of act of consumption too. That I'm kind of swallowing the whole world building by building. This is kind of the dirty secret of the project. It's a little.
I feel like my personal observation, which you kind of concluded with, that everything or your journey was derived to a point where it's sexual, where everything has that connotation. Just tracing back to all your works, like the cruising idea or being picked up, or being horny for mites, the act of swallowing, the passing through, even like the blood drawing, but even more so like something that I find so humble as the psychological entering of buildings and the drawing, the capturing of it, and the aesthetics that he presents actually is really quite perversive in that sense. The penetrating of the monuments.
Yeah. Although as much, and people have pointed this out, and I'm not unaware of it, that there's this kind of masculine imperative. I mean that it's buildings entered. It's me physically going into this building, but as much as I go into the building goes into me too. I think of it more as a kind of symbiotic relationship, this kind of intertwining. I'm not really interested in this kind of idea of conquest, even though they are new buildings or virgin buildings. It's not, that's not really my main motivation. I'm interested in intimacy. It's really about like a real relationship. It's not a one-night stand.
Or the idea of taking photos of the buildings before you tackle it.
Right, exactly.
It's very voyeuristic.
Right.
You're not dealing with it heads on, but you're taking your time.
Observing it, yeah. Well, like I said, sizing up an opponent, or watching, say, a girl dancing across the other side of the room before you go up and you talk to her. Yeah, there's a seductive quality to it, a flirtatiousness.
I have some question. Maybe some place or some spaces make you very confused for this activity surround you. It's like in Thailand, it's like in Chinatown, and I guess it's in China, it have a lot of this.
Yeah.
And for relationship, there's a picture and there's your select the article in the book.
Right.
how it's combined together.
You mean when
You're
I'm
confused with this the architecture, people activity, and this the text with this the image of this space.
Well, do you mean? I mean, when I'm out on the street, and if it's like a busy, crowded street, and it's a little, you know. But if I'm then going to go into a building, then you know I kind of force myself to find a space where I can, you know, look at the building and then take a photograph before going in. And you notice in all the drawings, I don't draw any of the people. I mean, many of the drawings, you know, I purposely leave out all the people. So I don't know if that's answering the question.
Because I have some experience also in the landscape. I feel it's really confusing. For my purpose in the beginning, and in the end, it's like totally collapse. The image of this I expect for.
Oh, you mean once you're. You mean your expectation once you. I try not to have any expectations. You know, I'm trying to just kind of see the world in a very like primitive, innocent way. Just in a way that the project is about a kind of getting back to experience before language, even before thinking. You know, just like it's me here now on this street corner, and you know, and there's 7-Eleven. That's it.
The shows are sort of coming out of the archive, right? You're drawing from these photographs that you've used to document all of these buildings. But what about that corpus? What about all of these images that are accumulating over the years? Do they, you know, exist on their own, or what is something going to happen to them? Do they stay in one? You know, are you really only concerned about the things that we see in an exhibition? What?
Well, the photographs I really never want to show. And I can't draw. There's more than 14,000 buildings in the archive now, and I can't draw every building. So the drawings become a kind of slice of the whole project. I mean, I do show the whole list of buildings. Every building I enter, this is the list. So every building I enter, you know, has the date and time, the building, the street location, the district, the city.
For 2003, you're drawing up the whole year.
The whole year, yeah. So I decided to sort of go, and it was just a transitional year in my life, and I went to some interesting places. So I thought, okay, I'll just take 1 year. But I showed the whole list. There's actually in the exhibition, there's a kind of, it prints out now as like a 300-page kind of document that's bound, and you can flip through it. You know, it can be sorted different ways. Like the one at the gallery is alphabetical by city and then by building, so you can look up the cities first. People seem to want to look up specific cities. Yeah, so there's the list and the drawings.
So in that sense, you can really map your journey.
Yeah, I know. Somebody was talking about, I guess there's some program on Google Maps now where you can plug in a bunch of addresses and it'll like, I don't know. I mean, when I started the project, there was no Google Maps. I mean, the internet was just kind of, it was there, but I mean, nowadays, you know, I can, in the past, if I didn't write down a building's location when I went into it, oftentimes I'm like having to find a map and go back and retrace my route. Now you can just type in a building and a city, and you know, it'll tell you where it is. So I've actually kind of had to going back and looking for missing buildings now, and you know, getting the information of their location. I mean, there were a few years I did the project, I was really sloppy about keeping track of things. like here. This is 2003. I was in Marseille. It was like a mess. Should we all go get a drink? Thanks again. Thank you.
Thanks.